Welcome to this episode of Abide in Me, How Jesus Models Secure Attachment with God. This series is a survey of the Gospel of Mark, looking for how Jesus models what is now called secure attachment, which is the physiological, emotional, cognitive, and spiritual experience of what is often called salvation or regeneration or being conjoined with God or enlightenment, individuation, even becoming spiritual. Through the series, we will discover the benefits of becoming securely attached with God, which is the transformation of one's life into one of joy and satisfaction. So we continue with Mark chapter 7, and Jesus models how to confront tradition and the status quo. And the lesson we learn is that a person who's securely attached does so from love of the people and the traditions and the world in which they live. We need to back up a little bit to see how this works. Here we're asserting that we are created for relationships, beginning with our inner spiritual, mental lives. That is a challenge we too often forget. People like Gurdjieff tell us to remember ourselves, which is a mindful observation of the process of our thoughts and emotions. This is how we will discover how we can love people, love ourselves, love God, and manifest that even in confronting traditions and ways of being. Now, I find it's helpful to imagine our inner life made up of parts. Our attachment style originates in how our different parts react internally to each other and to what happens around us. And the same pattern and process exists in human relationships amongst people. There is an indefinite variety of people, and we easily see our differences. What's harder is to remember that we are all created for relationships, that there is more that connects us than separates us. That is the urge of creation, the urge of life is to connect. Now, the Hebrew Scriptures' 10 Commandments give us a remarkably rich framework for understanding this process within ourselves. They provide benchmarks for seeing how our inner life then produces our outward behavior, how our inner life and our outer life are distinct and yet related. They're different and yet they connect. Jesus confronts people who know the distinction between their inner belief in the commandments, say, and the outer application, but they use the external rules for their own selfish gain, for power, for control, for honor, to mitigate their fear of the loss of power, for instance, and to hold on to the status quo. Jesus calls us instead to develop a way of being that is conscious of our need for secure attachment as distinct from mere obedience to rules, to commandments. He challenges us to face our tendencies to become defensive and stingy, merely materialistic, when we are focused only on external and material appearance of the obedience to God's laws. Genuine and authentic emotions rooted in a relationship with God or your higher power organize our thoughts and actions to align with the love we acknowledge flowing into us and through us. When we live this way, we experience ourselves as worthy, lovable, competent, all because we experience being connected to God, to the world, and to other living beings. This is what it means to be secure in ourselves, with God, with others. Jesus often is simply stating what should be obvious, and yet you and I know people who cannot see how their behavior is selfish or harmful. Perhaps they're coming from a place of ignorance, of having very poor models growing up, or from being wounded. A small but telling example comes from my own life. When I bought a slightly damaged floor model office chair, the salesman encouraged me to buy the $30 insurance plan and then file a claim later and get all my money back while keeping the chair. Now, the rules allowed it. He was right about that. It surprised me, but I had to tell him 3 times that I was not interested in playing that game. I wasn't that kind of person. I wasn't going to do that. Like many in Jesus' day, this man had lost a sense of the connection between the spirit of the law and its purpose in organizing people so that they can love each other and trust each other and be in relationship that is healthy and wholesome and mutually supportive. Jesus makes something clear. Rules are never meant to replace love or to prevent its expression. At the same time, he teaches that genuine love requires an inner work, what he calls being reborn. Without that transformation, we live from merely physical or natural desires rather than from love itself flowing in and through us. Now, again, we are considering how Jesus consistently models secure attachment. He knows he is loved. He's mindful about that, and in his prayers, he recognizes it. He reminds himself of it all the time. And because he knows he's loved, he can therefore love others unconditionally before, or even without, making any assessment about them, and especially about their obedience to the law. Everything he says and does shows us what this looks like and how it can be lived. That's why I want to look at this in detail. A securely attached person does not rely on rules to create relationships, though healthy relationships often share a respect for the same rules. Human beings are designed to give and receive love, to exchange this energy, and so to establish safe, meaningful, wholesome, transformative connections. We forget this when belief systems replace lived truths, when rules become more important than love. We then disconnect from the flow of divine love that moves through our souls into our minds and bodies and out into the world in filling our behavior with love. It's this separation of inner and outer, especially of the inner principles we live by and the outer rules or commands. This separation is what Jesus identifies as spiritual harm. Jesus highlights this when he challenges the misuse of the rule known as korban. Originally, it meant to support the temple through the generosity of the wealthy. Over time, it became a loophole. Children who had benefited from their parents' labor gave their wealth to the temple and so gained status and influence, but then neglected their parents' needs, claiming that the rule justified this behavior. The deeper commandment to honor father and mother was lost, perhaps not intentionally, but unconsciously over time, as the rules became dominant over loving each other. It seems to be a pretty continuous, natural development in all institutions across all cultures. As we seek to feel safe and secure, we demand that other people follow the same rules in order for us to have our own anxiety reduced or to have a sense of connection, when in fact that sense of connection, we're saying, and Jesus is modeling, comes from within. Jesus then turns from the Ten Commandments to the rules about food and purity, and we see a pattern emerging. He says, if you love me, then ... A securely attached person does not seek approval. Their actions flow from a genuine desire to do good for the neighbor. Rules serve as models, but what is truly being demonstrated is love. Love for God, for oneself, for others. It is this connection that produces the peace, the security, the well-being, and joy that we are seeking. Modern developmental psychology confirms this insight. Rules and consequences from breaking them are necessary early in a child's development. They protect and they guide immature minds. They give them a sense of grounding and reality of consequences. As one author puts it, rules enshrine our spiritual needs. Then, once we mature, rules alone are not enough for our human life and our human growth, because eventually such rules will be used as weapons by those seeking power. It is this abuse of rules that Jesus exposes, not the fact that they exist, but that they are no longer manifesting our love for each other. And I can do that manifestation only when I'm secure in that love and I'm not relying on the rules to establish the relationship, but it is my experience of the love flowing into and through me to the other person that establishes the relationship. Our challenge today is to discern how rules can genuinely express spiritual goodness. This becomes especially difficult in groups and institutions to maintain. Rules may begin as expression of shared values, right? But over time, they can be distorted by the pursuit of safety, the pursuit of maintaining organizational boundaries, if not, the more nefarious seeking of power or wealth or honor. The conflicts we face today about public policy, social boundaries, shared resources, are all opportunities for spiritual growth. When we ask how rules can express mutual trust and compassion and humility and care for one another, then something remarkable happens. As Jesus showed us, the rules fade into the background and a real connection, a secure attachment, is formed and then runs our world, runs our relationship. To develop this secure attachment, and especially in groups and organizations, is a slow, demanding, considerate work. It requires intentional, conscious attention over a period of time. Just consider what Jesus was asking of his disciples. They were raised to believe that certain foods and certain food handling and washing your hands and how you did worship determined their standing with God. Breaking those external rules threatened not only the individual's well-being and inclusion in God's people, but they believed it threatened the entire community. We face similar struggles today, even if the external subjects are different. So Jesus and many wise teachers since have made this clear. Peace and joy cannot be established through rules. Secure attachment is an inner state that each person gets to choose, gets to live into. As we've said, going through ordeals, being conscious and intentional about what's going on in one's inner life, being able to observe it because of a mindfulness practice. Jesus invites us to loosen our automatic reliance on rules and open our hearts to our neighbors, trusting that in so doing, we will not be harmed because the universe is looking for our good and our neighbor's good in those relationships. This trust in God and the universe and creation is, in fact, the deepest and most secure attachment we can know. It's our living connection to God, to the earth, and to all of life. And here's one more example of how Jesus is modeling how we can achieve that peace and that joy. I pray this has supported your transformative life, whatever practice you have in your life. I want to thank Solomon Keel for his music, and I want to invite you to make a contribution to this work if you wish and are able through the PayPal link. And I invite you to continue to listen to the next episode. You be well.